Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the United States Chess Championship. Many of you have been following this tournament alongside me over the last 10 days. Today we have round number 11 out of 13. Starting today, I will show you not just all the games, but I will show you the standings, because we are actually getting to that crunch time moment, those last few rounds, when we are going to crown a winner of the women's section and the open section. This tournament is also very exciting because we have Hans Niemann playing over the board for the first time after the recent chess drama, which continues to this day, really. We haven't really gotten a conclusion. And today, Hans played an absolutely wild game. So, as always, that is going to be part of the recap. Not much else to say. Let's have some fun. Enjoy. Hope you're having a great Tuesday morning. And if you are watching this on Tuesday evening or Wednesday or, I don't know, sometime in 2023, I just hope you're doing great, okay? So the first game that I would like to show you is the game between Begim Tokhirjonova and Jennifer Yu. These are two players who are having slightly different tournaments. Begim is kind of fighting maybe fourth place, third place, fifth place. She has some chances, of course, if she wins out. Jennifer Yu's contending for first place. She's looking for another U.S. Women's Championship. She plays the Petrov defense, and White plays this move d4, very decent move. Knight takes e4, bishop d3. Here there is one very funny line for black, which is knight c6, basically saying, oh no, my knight. If you take this, though, you run into d5, and then you run into a center fork. So knight c6 is a line, but Jennifer just plays this move. And this line has been seen many times, including at the recent candidates and years prior. Like this position has actually been reached at the highest level of chess. These two players are not super grandmasters, but they obviously study from the best. Well, that's how they reach this position. Now, here White plays the move c4. This is not the most common move, but it's very logical. You would like to undouble your pawns and attack the king. Black goes here, immediately counterattacking this pawn, and White says, well, I had one pawn here, so we just move this pawn up as well. Now White would love to play the move c5. Black really should take. If Black plays even like one more move incorrectly, White will play bishop g5, probably create a weakness here. So Black just decides to do this and basically says, yeah, you got nothing. All right, so it's going to be a game of no knights. Neither of these women like horses much, so they've decided to kill them immediately. All the horses died within the first 9 moves. This is just going to be a game of bishops, queens, and rooks, and of course pawns. White here needs to understand that the demands of the position are such that a positional game is upon us. And White plays this move h4. It's a very bold move, but it might be a bit flawed. Jennifer does a decent job here, just sort of centralizing the position. And Jennifer in this tournament has benefited from people kind of overextending against her. Like you see Begim here plays this move bishop g5. It's a very interesting idea. The whole point is to justify this move, sacrifice this, and then play like this and attack the king, right? Like that's the whole point of bishop g5. The problem is that Black can move the queen, and the rook is actually not hanging because it can move out of the way. And, once the dust settles and you get like a position like this, Black is a pawn up. White has opposite colored bishops, though. So technically this game should be equal. The best move here was rook e3 instead of rook e6, because rook e6 doesn't really have a target. And Jennifer just basically takes the pawn and is like, okay, well, I have 5 pawns and you have 4. But she's just kind of been the beneficiary of some of these moments in this tournament. Like Ashrita Eshwaran a couple of rounds ago just had an equal opening against Jennifer and then just kind of got too wild and aggressive. And in this game, this game probably should be headed for a draw. But White needs to understand that. White kind of needs to not get overly hostile and sort of stabilize the position. What ends up happening is we get a rook endgame, which probably still should be a draw because it's b pawns, which should nullify, and it's a 3-on-2, which should be a draw. At the highest level of the game, it should be a draw. Both players make 40 moves. Position is dead equal, right? White advances, and now plays this move g3. But White doesn't have to do that. White is not in a position to be clarifying the situation. White is worse. White should just chill. Just don't do anything. I mean, well, rook e4, I guess there's rook takes b7, so you can't even play rook e4. So g5, and then just f3. Like, just relax. Because Black has to be the one coming forward, right? And if the b pawns neutralize, it's a 2-on-1 or a 1-on-0, it's still a draw. But White plays g3, which is an incorrect transformation of the position. In fact, White takes the wrong way. White apparently should have gone here. That was apparently the way White could hold, but White is trying to force the issue in an endgame. She doesn't really have any business forcing the issue. And look what happens. Okay, now her king is getting pushed back. Jennifer sacrifices this pawn because of a mating idea. Like king g1, you have various mating ideas and you can win this pawn. You're very lucky this is not mate. Look, it's equal because there's a check. It's the only reason. Otherwise, this would have just straight up been mate. So she basically incorrectly kind of transforms the game, and now black has serious winning chances. And you see, it's exactly what's happening. And Jennifer Yu uses the 2-on-1 imbalance simplified incorrectly by white to win this pawn. This is easy. This is now a 2-on-0. It's now, I mean, now it was a 2-on-1, but that pawn was hardly a 1. Yeah, Jennifer just wins a relatively like effortless game with black. So now she is, pushing for first place. Another matchup between Nazi Paikidze and Irina Krush. Irina needs to win with black, so she plays the semi-Slav, which is a very good opening for black to try to play for a win. She plays a very solid semi-Slav, and we saw a game like this between Alice Lee and also Irina Krush, I believe. And the way Irina handled this opening, Nazi actually got an advantage with this idea d5. It's a very cagey approach by black, basically playing like this. You'll notice that white has a complete blockade now on the center, which is really bad for black. Black really should not be suffering like this. White will then slowly begin transferring pieces, activating the bishop. White also has various, rerouting ideas like this, h4, knight e4, knight g5, just getting kind of the bulldozers laser beaming down this way. And the position looks pretty good. So now it's up to white to prove an advantage. Okay, so she plays knight e4, she trades these bishops, she trades these knights, and plays a4 and a5. This is the way that white is trying to justify the better position. And so far, white is doing a very good job. White traded a few pieces, good center blockade, pressure on the queen side. Let's see if she is able to kind of punch the ticket. Take, okay? Now she plays rook e1, which is a bad move. Why is it a bad move? I don't know. She's trying to win back to control the e-file. What she had to do was prevent black's next break. Black is trying to play b5. It looks impossible, but that is what black is trying to accomplish for various tactical reasons against white's queen and white's center pawn. White should have gone knight b1 with the intention to reroute this knight to c3 from where it permanently shuts down the move b5 and white maintains an advantage. She does this, and black suddenly lashes out with the move b5, and if that move is possible, white no longer has the advantage. That was white's entire advantage. The fact that this pawn was very bad, was always going to be a backwards pawn. She lashes out with b5. You cannot do this because anywhere the bishop moves, the queen is hanging, right? Because this is all defended. And you can't take with the pawn because you lose your center pawn. And now black is just very happy, all right? Black is able to now avoid a queen trade and get into an endgame where she's up a pawn. So the thing about the game here for white is that white has to be cerebral enough to be like, wait a minute, I was better, but I'm no longer better. I've got to try to make a draw, right? I've got to try to stabilize. She doesn't. White cannot adapt to this new kind of change of the position. Like, wait a minute, I might actually be playing to hold. I'm not playing to be better. And over the course of 5 moves, ever since b5 changed the game, you just go 5 moves later, literally 6 moves later. Okay, white's 30th move after black's 24th move. So white made 6 more moves, and now white is completely lost. That's a very common phenomenon in chess when you don't adapt to the demands of the position. And now black actually, by the way, could have played rook e4 here. This is a totally reasonable position, queen e8, and just go for the king. But black does it this way and is just in very good shape. Now, of course, there is a chance Irina still messes this up in the rook and bishop endgame because white has a very powerful d-pawn, but the pawn gets down to c2, and white's pawn is there, but it's just not good enough. And this endgame is holdable for white, but very difficult. Very difficult. I mean, 3-3 on the same side could be holdable, but the thing is, if you transform the position incorrectly, you will probably lose. And if black is already kind of getting the king in, and I mean, white's king is totally paralyzed, that there is just nothing that you can do. Black walks directly into the white position, and look at this beautiful simplification. Look at this. This is high-level stuff. Sacks the rook for the bishop because this is a losing king and pawn endgame. That's some savage stuff. If white goes here, white will run out of space. And if white plays a move like h4, black will play gh4, and win the pawn race. Savage stuff. Cold-blooded stuff from Irina. And after 11 rounds of action, these are the standings on the women's side. Jennifer Yu with 8 out of 11, Irina 7.5, and a surprise number 3. Talia Cervantes Landero is in 3rd place with 7 points. Now, she's a point behind the gold, but she is there, and there are 2 more rounds to go. Alice Lee, strong with 6.5. Like how all the people have nobody tied with them. It's just like a bloodbath for the top 4 spots. Going to be a very exciting last couple of rounds there. Now, let's move along to the open section. The men today were in a fighting mood. They were in a very scrappy mood. There were blunders. There were all sorts of crazy games. So e4, e5 was the game between Schwiertz and Sevian. We have a mainline Spanish. Knight e4, this is the open Spanish. Sevian played this in his match online recently against Maxime Vacher-Legrave. I did commentary on that match. These guys played a ton of theory. We're not going to analyze all of this. It makes absolutely no difference. This is all theory. I promise. This is like, it's all theory. All right. They know everything here. Bishop f5. Black basically invests in an open position and has this pawn on d3, kind of like a thorn, not allowing white to develop. White will spend the rest of the game getting rid of this or playing around it. Rook e1, right? So white is sort of playing around it right now, kind of monitoring the queen side, not allowing, and just going to go rook e3 at some point. So bishop f4, just sort of like disregarding the pawn entirely. Okay. a5, counterattack on the queen side. g4, counterattack on the king side. You take, and now bishop a2. Okay. Clearly something has gone a bit bad, gone a bit wrong. Somewhere here, the position, there was something, maybe, but after this, Black just has a very good situation. Sevian demonstrating very nice preparation. Even this very passive move, playing against some various tactics on the f7 square, are kind of reasonable. Yeah, Schwiertz gets aggressive here with e6. Gets very aggressive here with e6. Notice that this pawn has sort of just survived the whole middle game and sort of stood there like, somehow no one's attacking me. Schwiertz plays e6. Very sharp move, can't take because this fork. So queen goes back to d8. Take, and now a nice move from Sevian, not taking back just yet, but king h8, just dipping out. White has to make a move now. It's not easy to do that. The best move here is apparently just retreating this bishop 1 square. I cannot explain this move to you. I think it's prophylactic to get off of the f-file, but white does this instead, and now we have this, and Sevian has really demonstrated just a brilliant style of chess thus far, and his pawn is very annoying also for Schwiertz, because at some point it's going to get mobile, right? It's going to start moving. It's not just going to be standing there like a gargoyle. King g2, we have a trade, and I think these guys have sort of played a perfect game. Now it starts to get quite imperfect. Rather than retreating out of the territory and trying to get his rook there, Schwiertz plays the move knight h4. We have knight bishop back to h7, avoiding capture, and knight to f5. The problem is that after this ensuing position, the knight for black is better than the bishop for white. Okay? Now you can play knight e7 here with black, and then play like knight d5 and knight f4. That's actually what Sevian should do. Then this doesn't scare him, because this trade is massively beneficial for black. Because once the dust settles, that pawn is a huge asset. It's no longer a liability. Okay? You'll play rook f3, you'll play rook d8. The pawn's, no one's gonna ever win the pawn. Nobody. White needed to win that pawn when way more pieces were on the board. Instead of that, Sevian does this. And after f4, he plays a very interesting idea. Rook takes f5. So you attack his knight, he takes your bishop, you now have the option to take his knight or his rook. Now, I know what you're thinking, right? No brainer, take this. The problem is that loses. Okay, that loses because there is a check. And after the check, the knight arrives or the queen arrives and the game is over. So if you go here or here, I have a fork. If you go here, it's check, it's king g1, it's check, it's knight f3, and you just lose. You lose all of your pieces. So you can't take the rook. But what do you take the knight with? And does it matter? It does. Normally, the absent-minded move is this, draw. Draw. Everybody goes home. But there is a massive difference in how you take that knight. If you take with the rook, it's a draw. But if you take with the pawn, I don't have to take. It's not checkers. Check. Oh my. Oh my. He ignores the pawn completely. And that's it. Rook g3, rook h3. Dariusz Schwiertz is completely lost. Look at the pawn going. Rook to d1, queen d3. That's it. You can now no longer defend yourself. Rook takes d2. He gives a check. Queen f4 check, and geometrically, white is completely lost here because of rook g3 and rook f1 and queen d2. Sam Sevian picks up white's queen and ends the game in style. Queen g3, queen g3. He will win all the pawns. The king will stop the passed e-pawn. Darius Schwartz resigns. Crazy that it comes down to one recapture in the late 30s. And that is the way Sevian wins. A huge win for Sam. The next game that I have for you from the open side, Wesley So versus Elshon. Elshon Moradia, buddy, he's having a tough event. And, you know, he's looking to bounce back. He plays once again the O'Kelly Sicilian, which is what he did against Shankland. He played this against Shankland. Now, his prep in this opening got him a pawn down position. Like, Elshon went for this. He was up like 40 minutes on the clock. But he's a pawn down. Now, for that pawn, he has a lot of activity. Look at Black's position. A lot of activity. The problem is when you play Wesley, so Wesley is 2770 classical. Okay? Just because he's 40 minutes down does not mean that he does not know how to convert a pawn up position. He's just going to consolidate, deal with all of Black's aggression, right? And then win. So he develops his knight, centralizes the other knight, develops his bishop, castles long, and plays this prophylactic move f3, which monitors the infiltration of the pieces. Now, Stockfish is showing that with perfect play, Black can equalize maybe. By playing the move e4, for example. And then after f4, playing knight b4, looking for this. And then if White plays like g4 and starts an attack, then there's like knight d3, take, and then f5, bishop f7, g5, and then knight goes back to d7. And apparently it's only plus 0.4, 0.5, even though you're a pawn up. But not only is Elshon just in a general sense, that's just a hard variation to find, he's also not having the best event. When you're not having the best event, at critical moments, you're not going to play the best move. So he plays knight d4, and immediately it's +1, right? That's the way chess works. When you have had 10 rounds of tough games, it doesn't suddenly all flip in game 11. You know what I mean? Knight d5, and now Wesley is starting to bully the Black pieces. He's like, oh yeah, you guys thought that you had counterplay, but here comes my knight, and look at me just anchoring in my knight on b6. Elshon basically played prep and had to continue playing critically to ask the White position the right questions. He failed to do that, and Wesley just does what a 2700 would do. He takes his extra pawn, and he books it. Like, he just runs away. You can't even take on f3, because I'll take your rook on d8, and the rest of the game is consolidation, simplification, completely isolating this rook on the edge of the board. It will be a miracle if that rook ever sees the light of day again. Wesley slowly improves his position, takes... Look at this. One knight left its duty of isolating the rook, and the other knight just immediately replaced it, and Elshon resigned. The rook absolutely paralyzed, Black unable to defend any of the pawns, and yeah, Wesley wins a relatively effortless game. I mean, granted, he was given a pawn in the opening, you know what I mean? But that's the kind of tournament Elshon is having. He's having a rough event, and when you have a rough event, you play slightly dicier openings, you try to take more risks, because you don't want to play the main lines. You're sort of like averse to trying to play a lot of those main lines, and it happens. It happens. He's having a tough event. Wesley gets a big win. This game was 130 moves. Now, because, you know, I'm not unreasonable, I'm not going to sit here and spend 30 minutes analyzing it. Christopher Yu plays a Scandinavian defense against Linier. I don't know the last time. Can somebody please look it up? When's the last time Linier Dominguez played a classical game of chess and it was a Scandinavian? It's probably been like 15 years. He plays at the highest level. Nobody plays the Scandinavian at the highest level. Chris Yu shows up and plays a sideline of a variation. This is all, I think, like some super modern stuff. Queen goes here, then here, then here. This is why I don't recommend the Queen D6 Scandinavian for newbies. I recommend the Queen A5 Scandi or the Queen all the way back Scandi, because your queen just gets chased around, and when you're like 1100, you're going to lose your queen. Now, Bishop E6 is a very interesting move. So first of all, Linier plays this to go here, hit the queen again, and then put his knight in the center. This move is designed to stop this, or at least slow it down, because take, oh no, fork! But knight D2 back. Now, Linier here was already down like an hour. It was crazy. Chris Yu plays bishop h6, the super fianchetto, threatening to take and then take the bishop for free. So queen e2 and the sacrifice of b2, but not just b2, also another pawn. Okay, so from the opening, Christopher Yu was up straight up 2 pawns. But why is White still better? That's really scary. White is better because... Number one, White has way more development. So White's castle pieces out, but the quality of White's pieces cannot be understated. The bishops here are beasts. The knights are stuck at home in their stable. The bishops can immediately start bullying long range, right? And black still needs time to set up defensively. Let me tell you what I mean, okay? You see how all of this is under pressure? So in a perfect world, like let's say black plays b6, okay? And then black plays, I don't even know, like let's say castles and then just 3 moves, all right? Let's give black 3 moves to like consolidate. Now black has no weaknesses. But we're 3 moves away from that. Look, he tries to trade queens. Lanier says, sure, but on my terms. So we're going to trade queens, but this is still under attack. So you got to defend it. The second you defend it, that opens this diagonal. So now you got to put this here. So now your knight can't move because this is hanging. And now I know you want a castle, so I'm going to go here. So now this, and this is all hanging. When 3 of your 4 pieces are on the home squares, 4 of your 5 pieces are on the home squares for Chris Hugh, you're not better. I don't care if you're up 2 pawns. There is no 2-pawn advantage here. If you try to do this, I'm going to go here and get in there. Black just can't move. So what does Chris Hugh do? He chucks one of his pawns, gives away one of the pawns, and allows white to have activity. Look at the white rook, just a menace on b7. You know what the craziest thing is? None of these pieces see each other. Like all 4 of these pieces. These pieces see the knight, but none of them see each other. The rook is just sort of standing here like, I'm gonna get one of you, right? So Chris Hugh activates on b4 and then takes a pawn. So Chris Hugh is back up to being 2 pawns. He's back 2 pawns up. 4-6. Rook d7, knight 2 to b4. I mean, Chris Hugh's not worse. Knight b4 was not an accurate move. I think he had to play rook e8, but the position is really difficult. Because the thing is, Chris Hugh, to activate his position and not get blown off the board, is going to have to give back 1 or 2 of the pawns. The problem is, if he does it the wrong way, he's going to get busted, okay? Chris Hugh tries to do it in the following way, right? He's like repeating moves here, but Lanier's like, I'm not going to repeat moves. I'm going to play h4, h5, g5. Like, I'm going to suffocate the black king. Chris Hugh's like, damn, what do I do? Do I play b5? Do I play c5? c5. Okay, rook d7 attacks the a7 pawn, and now Chris Hugh is like, all right, look, I could defend the position, but let me go b5. Because if I clear out the queen side, it's a draw, right? I got 3 on 1. He could win my pawns, but it's not going to work. But the problem with doing it this way is that after cb5, you have to probably go here. And I mean, this just looks really suspicious. With rook here on the way, that's back rank mate. So you've got to be sure that you can defend your position here. He doesn't do that and instead does this. The problem with this is that when the dust settles, I think this was Chris's idea. I'm not exactly sure what he blundered, but his idea was 3 on 3, just like you saw in that game. Crush versus Paikidze. No. Yes, Crush versus Paikidze, the 3 on 3, but more pieces on the board. And Lanier ultimately gets to an endgame where it's like this. Same exact pawns. The a7 pawn will fall, rest assured. That pawn will not survive a long time. He will win that pawn at some point. There it is. Now Lanier has to win this game. How? How does he do it? How do you break through a knight and a pawn? What do you trade, right? Well, you try to trade the rooks. Black is not trying to trade the rooks with you, okay? Black's not trying to trade the rooks. He's got a good solid position. Pieces shuffle. I'm going to have a sip of my iced coffee. Nothing happens for about 50 moves. There's nothing happening. Trying to get in with his king. Black playing good defense. All right, remember, okay, you see this move? In chess, we have a rule called the 50-move rule, 5-0. So if there's no captures and no pawns are pushed, the game is a draw. So this pawn push now resets that counter. And he had to do it, otherwise he would have lost this pawn. So now we go back for another 50 moves. All right, Black's got a fortress here, shuffling the king back and forth. Again, trading the rook here would not be a good idea for Black. So Black's trying to keep the rook on. The computer in some cases actually thinks that this is a potentially holdable endgame, but like there's no need to even, you have absolutely no need to trade the rook. We have now crossed the 100 mark. Why is this winning suddenly? Like, how did we get to +2? Well, apparently this was bad. Here, Chris Hugh had to keep his rook on the e-file because somehow maybe there are ways to get to this king or play knight e6, but either way, it's a very tough position, and at some point, Black will have to play f5. Because Black's king is going to get suffocated here. This is the only way to win, is like creating one threat against the king. He tries to do that, and at some point, Chris will have to play the move f5. He's going to have absolutely no way to defend himself. Right here, Chris could have apparently played f5, and apparently this held. This was apparently a drawing mechanism. The point is that after rook e5, rook a4 check, you trade rooks, and then you play knight h5, knight g3, knight f5, and it's a draw. I think. So on the 104th move, Chris could have sacked his f-pawn. Could have sacked his f-pawn instead of playing rook a4, but he plays rook a4 because he's a human being and it's 6 hours into a chess game. But now, you know, the pressure with the white king coming in seems to be building a little bit too much. And seeing that this was on the way and various back rank things, he plays f5, and the 50 moves reset. He activates, and he's gotten this far. I think this is a draw. Chris Yu was in the... I mean, he's basically in the draw. Oh. Chris had to play knight d8. Was the only move. It's the only move. The point is, if he goes knight c5 and king e3, we just win this. So, for example, knight e4, rook g6, and black is in zugzwang. Black has to give away the pawn. Knight d8 was the only move. Why? Because after king e3, you can go knight f7, and then you can play king d5. So you can actually stay passive. Now, white still might win the game. Okay, white might still find a way to win the game after knight f7. There might, I don't know how he's going to do it, but this is the defensive fortress. If rook to g7, king to e6, and if you play something like king to e4, I just go king to f6. And this is just shocking. 120 moves into this game, black has some defensive fortress, but he does it the wrong way, and white now gets the perfect setup, pushes the king and the knight back at the same time, and is going to win the f5 pawn. And it took 131 moves, but Linier Dominguez wins. Endgames suck, man. Those are the kinds of games that just make you hate chess. Like, you play 7 hours and then you lose, and it's just it's tough, brutal. I hope Chris is not upset. I was upset watching this game. Chess is hard. And that takes me to my last game of the day. Hans Niemann versus Alexander Letterman. Niemann said himself after winning his last round against Elshon that the comeback is afoot. His last opponents are Letterman, Awonder Liang, and Sam Sevian. Not in that order, but he wants to win all those games. We'll see if it happens. Won't that be a story if Hans wins his last 4 rounds? That would be sick. So this game begins with a slow Slav. One that drives Zhiguli. Bishop g4. This line is very provocative by black, because normally in the slow Slav, the bishop goes to f5, but bishop g4 is very provocative because white actually will very happily chase away the bishop and then go win the bishop. So white now has 2 bishops. We'll play g5, bishop g2, and here's what forces are pulling this position, right? White is saying, I have more space, I have the bishop pair, you're very passive, and you're trash. Black is saying, all those things may be true, but probably aren't. You're not going to break through my defenses. So white plays g5. Black goes knight e4. White takes. White plays h4, which is good improving move. Also h5 in the future. Queen g4 ideas, and so on. Black plays bishop b4 check. Bishop d2. Queen a5. We're going to trade on my terms. White says, nope, we're going to trade on my terms. We're going to trade everything. So black directly goes for this position. And then plays the move f5. White now plays c5, taking space on the queen side and also activating the bishop on c4. King e7. White takes more space because you need to play where you have more space. b4 is a very logical move. Up until this point, Hans Niemann once played this game with black. Letterman played a whole line with black that Niemann once played himself with black against David Anton Guijarro, Spanish grandmaster. And that was a long time ago, maybe like a year ago. And in this game, the game deviates right around now, right? So black has an equalizing plan here, e5, which is to attack in the center. White now plays this, and Hans basically played this entire game like instantly because he knew all these lines already because he once played them with black. Now white has only one way to play for advantage. It's not pushing the queen side. It's not going a4 and all this. It's not trying to go for d5. No. The way to play this is you play against black's strongest point, f3. I know Ben Feingold says not to play it, but sometimes you got to. Point is that if black ignores it like this, then take rook e1, white wins the game. But if you do this, white will still win the pawn. So you don't need to play the move f3. I mean, prepare the move f3 to play it. You can just play it. So we have this. Now, why is Hans better? Hans is better because he has way more space. Hans is better because the bishop is better than the knight. Because the knight's only active square is e6, and the bishop controls all the squares and also threatens to get in and do this, right? So here, 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 and rook h3. Now, Hans doesn't play this exactly accurately. Apparently here there was the incredible move rook ff1 with the idea of enabling this move. So in the future, you have h5 to soften up this, and this no longer hits this. Very interesting. He doesn't play this exactly accurately, and we get into an endgame of rook and knight versus rook and bishop. Very traditional style endgame. Of course, white is better, because as you can see, anywhere the knight moves right now, it will get taken. So the bishop can control a lot of the knight moves, and so Hans starts pounding away at the queen side. So Hans has had a dominant space advantage the entire game, which means that he can push it forward. Black plays knight e6, king b4. You can't take this because rook d3, knight here, rook slides back. King c7, Hans keeps pushing. I mean, it's the only thing he can do. Take. Bishop takes. Kicks out the bishop. Knight e6. Very provocative move. A fork, though. It's a fork. Because if you take, rook is hanging. So d5. Knight g5. Wait a minute, this is crazy. d6 check. King to d8. And now, in this position, Hans has the move c6. So while this is all sort of stuck, he tries to sneak in with cb and c7. Okay? Now, in this position, rather than taking this, okay, apparently there is this move king c8. Okay, king c8 has an idea to just basically take back on b7. But now the white king can walk into the position. So that doesn't exactly work. Okay, so we have this. Now we have king c5 walking in the king, f4. Okay, f4 is a very logical move, trying to just do it himself. But when the king went to c5, it wasn't just the king that got active. The rook now found another purpose. It flies over to b2. Rook b8 check is coming. The knight is now actually hanging. And you can come back and check, but it doesn't matter because all four of white's remaining pieces are now active. That is a checkmate threat, as well as just a threat to win the rook on h8. So we have knight b5, but this rook endgame is also winning. Because king c7, d7, and you cannot stop a combination of the rook and the pawn. This game got out of hand for Letterman right around here when he kind of took this bait and now realized that with all this coming, he was in serious trouble. And the position was basically just lost. He probably should have not done this. He probably should have not been so provocative, but already the position was getting from bad to worse. And maybe king c8 was the way to hold here. This seems to have been the right idea instead of playing the move king d8. Now, c6 still looks very logical because after this, you want to play king c5, but then knight e4, king c6, and there was rook d8. You needed to have this important defensive resource throughout this endgame. Instead, he put his king on d8, and after c6, he was unable to defend the position, and Hans got a win. So 2 wins in a row for Hans. Little bounce back action. And after 11 rounds of action in the open section, this is what it looks like. We have Fabiano Caruana up top with 7.5 out of 11. Ray Robson with 7. Sevian and Dominguez with 6.5. So right now, they have all basically played against each other. If somebody beats Caruana, it's a wide open tournament. Otherwise, if he gets even one more win, I think he clinches the title. So very curious to see what happens in the next few rounds. I hope you enjoyed today's recap as well. Hans Niemann, he's back, and I don't know if you feel the same way I do, but regardless of his results, doesn't matter if he wins, it doesn't matter if he loses, it's going to be a story, right? Because no matter what Hans Niemann's result is, people are going to use that result to spin it for the narrative of the drama and of the situation of his past online alleged and confessed to, cheating things. And I'm just curious to see how it develops, I'm just curious, and I'm sitting here eagerly awaiting it like all of you. That's all. I'll see you for round number 12. Get out of here.